All right, folks, this is Scott Moore from Whack Outdoors. Running out of daylight, but I'm out on the front porch building some arrows like normal. And the arrows that I'm working on right now are a little bit different than what you're used to seeing. I have a set of Greenwood wooden arrows that Cody Greenwood and the Push is offering. You can look at the details on the Push website. Excuse the dog barking in the background. He has heard me talking now, and he thinks that I should go out there and pay attention to him. Through the years, hey Doug, I'm glad you're watching. Through the years, I have built and hunted with wooden arrows. Back through the 80s and 90s, I just about exclusively hunted with wooden arrows. Went to aluminum, and as I started shooting hogs at night and wanted to use a lighted nock, I went to carbon arrows. But when the Push started offering wooden arrows that are footed, that intrigued me, and I wanted to give them a try. And the Greenwood Footed wooden arrows are footed with something different than what we're accustomed to seeing. We're accustomed to seeing a softwood arrow shaft like fir or cedar that is footed with a hardwood. And the one variation that you get with a hardwood footing that is very difficult to overcome is the consistency of the wood itself. When you get your footings made to build a set of arrows, even if it's the exact same type of hardwood, you're going to find a great variance in the grain weight of the footing themselves. In my experience, 40 to 70 grains. So what the Greenwood wooden arrows that are footed shafts have to offer that is different is these footings are made out of a laminated birch, which gives you a very consistent grain weight. I know I'm out here and it's getting dark and you might have a hard time seeing these really well, but there's actually two types of footings offered. One is a Spectraply and the other is a Dymilux. And the Spectraply is a laminated birch that is just glued together. And the Dymilux is the same laminated birch that is resin impregnated, which makes it a lot heavier. These arrows I have in my hand are full length. They're almost 34 inches long, and the raw shafts, the Dymilux, which is the heavier one, is weighing right at 540 grains. And the lighter Spectraply is right at, well, let's wait and see. I'll put this on the scale real quick. Just bear with me. As always, when I'm doing these live feeds, I just am out here doing something, and I'm thinking, if I don't turn the camera on, I'm going to have these arrows built before any of the individual steps can be seen. So putting this on the grain scale, the Spectraply, we're looking at 440 grains for a raw shaft. The Dymilux, which is resin impregnated, I actually have the weights written on all these. I don't know why I'm weighing them. But anyway, all of these are right at 480 grains. Now, I will say that these right here, and by the way, the color is Deadpool. These are 65 to 70 spine. And the Spectraply, which is Yellow Jacket with the yellow and gray, is 55 to 60. So there's a little bit of weight variance based on the spine of the arrows. But the bottom line is, for a wooden shaft offering, these things are very heavy. Again, this This raw shaft is 440, and the 65 to 70 Dynalux is 480. So you have to figure the raw shaft is 480. You add 125 grain point to that, you're looking at 580, 605, and you add some stain, some clear coat of some sort, your feathers and nocks, you're going to end up with a pretty heavy arrow pretty quick. Now, I typically shoot 200 grain, 250 grain broadheads. I have not shot a 125 grain broadhead in a long time, but because of the weight of these shafts, I'm going to make these with 125 grain broadheads, which with the added weight of these footings, you already have a lot of weight up front to begin with. I believe on the Push website it says that you have about 5% FOC right out of the gate with the raw shaft. But a couple of things that I wanted to mention as I build these is tuning a wooden arrow. When you're tuning a set of carbon arrows, you can get them set up and cut off the nock end and shoot them and see how you're doing. And with the wooden arrow, you have to be a little bit more industrious, I guess is a proper term, on how you do this. So I'm just mentioning randomly things I ran into as I am building these. They come with the point taper already in place. You will have to do the nock taper yourself. The point taper is a nice long taper, and as always has been the case with wooden arrows, any of your broadheads, regardless what type you're using, the ferrule on your broadhead is normally quite long. So when you have a nice long taper on a wooden arrow and you put your broadhead on it, you're in good shape. All these broadheads of different kinds, they go right to the end of the taper. Even this old bodkin does. The problem you have with field points is field points are quite a bit shorter. So when you put a field point on, you bottom out on the end of the taper before the field point is seated nicely on the shaft. So what I've had to do to these, and it's no big deal, I literally just took a pocket knife and I knocked about maybe 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 off the end of this taper, so that when I put the field point on, it's seated nicely on the shaft to the back of the taper for the point. On the nock end, just like anything else, we're going to start with these shafts long and shorten them until we get them correct. The concept of bare shaft tuning with a wooden shaft is pretty much a no-go, because unless you are extremely adept at doing this, out of the gate, you're going to be shooting a shaft that is too weak, not tuned to the bow, and these wooden arrows will not withstand striking a target at a radical angle like a carbon or aluminum arrow will. So what you're going to end up doing is snapping your shafts, and they typically break right at the back end of the joint between the footing and the main shaft. You see this better on one that's not been stained. But anyway, your shaft's going to snap off right there, and you're going to be disappointed, and it's not necessary. So when we tune these to get them shooting correctly out of whatever bow we're going to shoot them out of, we need to have the ability to work off the nock end starting weak and shortening them until we have them dead perfect left and right. And not to get into all this right now in this live feed, but walk back tuning is what I do. And so what I've done here, first of all, I glued the nock on with this low heat glue, just the smallest smear of it, just so the nock doesn't come off when I'm shooting. And I've heard different folks, and even Cody, recommend using the fletching tape to put your fletching on so you can move it as you're tuning. and that's a great idea. I don't have any fletching tape, and I'm not going to order any weight on it. I've made quite a few primitive arrows, so I simply cut some real short feathers. I just hand cut them with scissors. I made the total arrow 4 inches, and I cut a tag on both ends about 1/4 inch. So the actual fletching is about 3.5 inches. And I literally just lashed it on there with some thread. And I put it far enough forward, it's not going to interfere with the riser or rest any on the bow, but I have room here to take about 1 inch of length off this arrow as I'm tuning and leave the fletching in place. So this is what I'm working with. And again, I'm mentioning this stuff just randomly as I look at the table and see it. These particular arrows, I chose to stain the back about 12 inches just with a red dye. I went ahead and used the dip tube and the lacquer gasket and dipped about 6 or 8 coats on here. That worked perfect. So I have my raw shafts straightened, dipped, and I have a couple here that I'm experimenting with. And once I determine just how long I want these to be, I will go ahead and finish out the arrow as far as gluing the nocks on permanently, gluing some fletching on permanently, doing a little cresting probably right here at the break between what's been dyed or stained with the color and what's not. And as I shoot these arrows, I'll turn the phone back on and I'll let you know how that is going. The one thing about straightening these arrows that I ran into that was an issue that I had to overcome. Any of you that have made wooden arrows, you know this. If you haven't, no wooden arrow is perfectly straight. You're accustomed to carbon. Carbon's a nice straight shaft, or aluminum. A wooden arrow by nature, it doesn't matter who produces it or what wood it is produced from. A wooden arrow, even though they are relatively straight from the manufacturer, they're wood. They're not sealed. They're going to move a little bit and they need straightened. Try to keep this all on video. When I sight down an arrow and I see a spot that's not quite straight, I'm literally going to take the heel of my hand and I'm just going to flex it like this, and I'm going to straighten that arrow. The problem is right here at the end of this joint. You see the darker one. And again, this color is a Deadpool, which is a real nice red, almost a burgundy, and a charcoal gray, which I love. But anyway, again, the issue that I ran into straightening these was some of them were a little crooked right here at this joint. And I'm positively sure when they were put together, they were perfectly straight. But you have a softer wood, you have grain variation, and that softer wood has been cut into 4 segments. It's just like any of you that have done carpentry. You can take a 2x6 that is perfectly straight. And if you rip that in half with a table saw and you make it into 2 2x3s, they might very well bend and go their separate ways, even though the 2x6 was perfectly straight. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think that more than likely, because the softer wood is divided into 4 sections, it maybe is able to spring or move one way or the other. And once these are glued, and again, I'm sure they were glued perfectly straight when I got them, put them on a spinner, a couple of them were just a little crooked. And what I did to overcome that being crooked, I'm not going to do it here for you right now. I shot a little video when I was doing it, and maybe I can just show you a little video of what I did and let you see it. I think this will work. I'm going to set this up and I think we're going to be able to make this work. I'm just going to show you my video. But basically what I did was you can absolutely take wooden arrows, you can sight down them, you can straighten them like this, put a little bit more pressure on them if you need to. But at this joint, which everything's glued, I was afraid that if I got right in here and tried to put much pressure on this, I would snap it. So what I chose to do was heat it. And what I did was I took a heat gun and I put it on the lowest setting. I put a heat gun right on this joint and heated it up till it was almost too hard to handle without gloves, which, by the way, was just right at 16, 18 seconds was all it took with the heat gun, and then just very gently moved it the way I needed to straighten it out. And I'm going to try to turn the camera around and literally just show you on my laptop exactly what I did. It'll be much better than me trying to show you. Okay, and I think even though we might have a little bit of glare, this is going to work. And I'm going to hit play. And what you're going to see here is you see the wobble as I spin that. And again, the shaft is straight, the footing is straight, but the junction of the two is a little crooked. As I'm showing right there, I have a pencil mark where that's the high side, so to speak. So I know which way to bend it. And I'm going to try to speed this along a little bit. I'll just keep talking. Again, I put the heat gun on it, and I put that heat gun on it for just about 16, 18 seconds while I was moving the shaft around. And again, I've done this quite a bit. And like I said, I literally just count in about 16, maybe 18 seconds. Has that just almost too hot to touch with your bare fingers. And you can literally feel it bending under your hand when you're doing it. And if you just watch here real quick and bear with me, I'm literally going to grab this thing, get my pencil mark, and I'm just going to tweak it a little bit. I mean, not much. And I could actually feel it move just a little bit. And if you watch now, when I put that back on there, you can see that it is dramatically straighter. So I thought I'd share that tip for any of you that are dealing with the arrows and trying to get them straight. I just got a big mess here on the table, and I'll just let you look at this while I'm talking. Again, I normally shoot much heavier broadheads, but because of the weight of these shafts in general and the weight of the front end because of the footings in particular, I dug into my arrow box, and I have some old, I believe these are Delta's version. These are the Winsel Woodsmans that we are all familiar with. They're 125s. This is Delta's offering of the old original snuffer, and this is the old bodkin by the Whiffen Company. And in the Grizzlies, which one reason I love the Grizzlies is because we got the 125s, the 150s, and the 185s. So after I get these arrows about the length I want them, I'm going to try to get them all shooting good with the 125 grain heads, which I'm positively sure that I will. But just in case I want to try different bows, I have the option to go on with the single bevel, and again, having the 125, the 155. I'm sure between those, I will make something happen. So we're going to turn this back on so you can see me. And again, if you have any questions, just shoot them to me in the comments. Again, this is random and in no particular order and unorganized, but I'm afraid that as I get these arrows built, they're going to be completely done, and I will have not have showed you anything, so that's why I turned the camera on. And again, while I have it on, I'll mention a couple other things real quickly about gluing components on the wooden arrows. All of your points, even if they are brand new, you want some good, raw, clean metal in there for the glue to contact when you glue them onto your wooden arrows. There's fancy tools you can buy to do this, but I just take a piece of sandpaper, roll it up into a cone that'll fit in there, and I use this sandpaper, and I scuff up the inside real good. I take a Q-tip that I've dipped in alcohol, and I stick it in there, and just clean that up and make a nice, clean, degreased surface to glue onto the wooden arrows. And I am going to go ahead and use the low temp glue on the field points and the broadheads. I'm actually going to use a regular fletching glue of some sort for the fletching and the nocks. Unless you have questions, I just wanted to show you that real quick. But again, these are absolutely beautiful arrows. I'm really excited about trying them. And again, the takeaway from this live feed is to tune these arrows. I got people driving down the road and waving at me. I just used some lashing and put some about 3.5-inch feathers. And I want to mention that too. I don't want a whole bunch of feather that's going to force this thing to fly perfectly straight. 3.5 inches, not a real high profile. That way it's still going to give me a tell on what type of arrow flight I'm getting, but it's going to keep them from going sideways and breaking. I'm going to shoot these into a bag target. I'm not going to shoot these into a really hard target like a 3D target or a blob target. I'm going to shoot these into a bag because it's nice and soft. I don't care about the angle that the arrows hit the bag. I'm not the least bit concerned about that. My bows are tuned. I have aluminum arrows and carbon arrows that fly well out of my bows. And I'm simply going to mess with these wooden arrows until they hit the same place. And I'm going to back up and shoot some more and make sure I'm still in line left and right. And I'm not fading off to the left or fading off to the right. When it comes down to shooting the broadheads, and I've done this for a long time, I'm going to go to a big box store and I'm going to buy a cheap styrofoam archery target that costs $15. And that's what I'm going to shoot my broadheads into, because your broadheads will pull out of those very easily. If you go shooting your broadheads into a high dollar broadhead target, blob target, block target, 3D deer, whatever, it doesn't matter what type of glue you use, you have the chance of pulling your wooden arrow out of that target minus the broadhead, and the broadhead is going to be in your target. That's not good. So again, I'm going to shoot into a bag target to tune these arrows. When I get the arrows tuned and put broadheads on them, I'm going to shoot into a styrofoam cheap block target that costs $15 to see how the broadheads are flying, because that target is very easy on the broadheads. It's very easy to pull them out. So as a recap, I have some footed wooden shafts that I purchased off of the Push website. They're put out by Cody Greenwood. They're Greenwood Arrows. Very excited about them. In order to tune them, I have lashed these feathers on temporarily. I left room to shorten the arrow on the back end. I will do that by heating the nock with a hair dryer, pulling it off, cutting a little off, cutting a new nock taper, and gluing it back on. And when I get these all tuned up, I'll share with you what bow I'm shooting them out of, because that's another thing. These wooden arrows, and with the heavy weight of the footing in the front, they're going to flex and have that archer's paradox that we all grew up hearing about. If you're shooting a modern riser, like an ILF riser like I do, those risers are cut past center. These arrows, I'm told, shoot well out of the more traditional longbows that are not cut to center. I have several. I only have one out here with me as far as the bows go. I have 3 or 4 reflex deflex longbows. Some are cut almost to center. Some are not cut to center at all. They're all around 45 pounds at my draw length. And once I start getting these arrows close, I'm going to see which bow likes them. I'm literally going to shoot them out of 2 or 3 bows. And the bow that shoots these arrows the best, that's the bow that I'm shooting these arrows out of. To me, if a bow shoots well, I'm good to go. I don't care if the bow costs $200 or $2,000. The animals don't know the difference, and I can't shoot the difference. The reason I'm bringing this up. This is a Galaxy Black Ridge Reflex Deflex longbow. This is a bow from overseas. When I bought this bow, it retailed for $189, so it's a $200 bow. 2 years ago when I hunted this bow, I literally got some 20-year-old wooden arrows and this $200 bow, and I shot 4 deer with it, and we did fine. So, simply from an aesthetics point of view, I know the light's not good, but I just think that the color scheme on these arrows and this bow look pretty smooth together. So for that reason alone, I'm going to get those arrows tuned up, I believe, out of this bow, and we're going to let them fly. Turkey season's already opened up in Georgia. It's going to open up the 1st of April in South Carolina. I can hunt both sides of the lake here where I live. I can hunt Georgia and South Carolina. And I told you I'm going to stick with 125 grain broadheads. I'm going to go with these old Winslow Woodsmans, because if I run into a hog, I'm not worried about penetration, because it's a nice small 3-blade, but I really do prefer the 3 blades on a hog. I've mentioned that several times. And for the turkeys, I want something a little bit wider maybe. And again, I think these are the, someone correct me if I'm wrong, because I've had these for a long time. I'm pretty sure these are the snuffers after Delta started making them, if that's right. And these are a little bit wider. I like that. And I also am not opposed one bit to shoot a turkey with the old Whiffin vodka point. These have killed a lot of game a lot of years ago. I will tell you that this is a very soft metal. I'm not a fan of these for hogs or deer. I know they could kill them, but I'm not really going there. But in my past experience, these things have flown extremely well. So, with the tapers I'm working with on these wooden arrows, these fit real good, and I just might go with these. Again, whatever shoots is what I'm doing. I don't know how long I've been on here. I'm sure it's plenty long enough, so I'm going to kind of wrap this up. As a side note, I guess, kind of like a public service announcement, I do live down here in South Carolina. I participate in a few archery shoots over in Georgia. The Traditional Bow Hunters of Georgia is having their state shoot this year, / Dan Quillian Memorial Shoot. That shoot is being held in Forsyth, Georgia, and someone correct me, I'm doing this off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure it's May 15th and 16th. That's going to be on Jerry Russell's Hunt Club. It's going to be on a private piece of property, but I'm sure they're going to set a very nice range up, and they're going to have their state shoot. Come one, come all, you're all welcome. That has always been a very traditional club. I've always been proud to be a member. It has always basically been a bow hunting club and not a target shooting club. But we have a southern zone shoot, central zone shoot, and a northern zone shoot once a year. And the championship, you normally count on 4 shoots a year, and they normally do 3 or 4 hunts a year, where they get together as a club at a game unit somewhere and camp a couple days and hunt. But the change that's been made this year that I noticed in the flyer for the shoot is they have created and provided a open/barebow class. And this is significant because any of you guys out there that you're shooting ILF rigs, you're shooting 3 fingers under, if you're shooting a crawl, you're string walking, you're gap shooting, whatever you're doing, there's room for everybody in this sport. And the Traditional Bow Hunters of Georgia has added that open/barebow class to their shoot. It's a fantastic venue. It's a fantastic part of the country. There's plenty of motels, very short distance from the shoot. So if you live anywhere in the Southeast and you are dabbling in or considering shooting barebow or a more modern style of single string archery, I invite you and encourage you to come out to the state shoot that the Traditional Bow Hunters of Georgia is having on May 15th and 16th in Forsyth, Georgia. And something else is happening during that shoot. I guess this will be the first official mention of it. Again, I have been a member of that club for 30 years. I have been a member of the Traditional Bow Hunters of Georgia off and on since, I'm going to say 91. And that club, like all clubs, has gone through growing pains. It's been here and there. Numbers have peaked and declined and come back several times through the years. But as a club and as an older member, I look at all the clubs that are primarily traditional archery clubs, and I see the older folks fading away and the newer folks that are participating in the club. The bottom line is I don't want to see the history lost. I don't want to see some of these clubs that are older clubs get to the point where the membership doesn't know where we came from, so to speak. So in Forsyth, Georgia, the Traditional Bow Hunters of Georgia, the state shoot / Dan Quillian Memorial Shoot, May 15th and 16th, I am going to be there with a video camera, and I'm going to shoot a video during that shoot, and I'm going to create basically a documentary for the club, and my goal is to interview some of the older members and new members and get an accounting, so to speak, of the club, where we came from, where we're at now, and preserve that history. So if you're a member of the club and you're watching this, it might be the first you've heard of it. But again, I'm going to enlist some help and have a few video cameras, and strictly voluntary on your part if you want to participate. I want to get some folks to chime in, just kind of let us know how they started, how long they've been shooting traditional archery, what their involvement in the club is, and see if we can't capture some footage and put together a video that will let us as a club look back and see where we came from and make sure that that history is preserved. So look for more information in the future about that. I'm looking at something like a theme for this video, the Traditional Bow Hunters of Georgia, the TBG. I'm looking at something like I Am the TBG. And we're going to put that video format out there sometime here in the future and see if we can't put together a project that, again, will preserve the heritage, the tradition, and the history of this club. So look for that in the future, and look for me to come back on here in the near future and continue with the progress of building and tuning these Greenwood Footed wooden arrows. Turkey season's in. There's still some hogs out there running around. I'm going to get in the woods, get after them, and let you know how that's going. So as always, this is Scott Moore from Whack Outdoors. God bless, and I hope to see you in the field and on the trail.